Hello again. Welcome to a training video on the security system in PayPak Professional 4.0 and other GrayNote software products. This video focuses on the menu access screen. There are other related videos which explain specific security features in greater detail, and I recommend that you invest a few minutes to take a look at them and master your knowledge of the security system. So let's log in and show you how it works. The security option is found under the admin section of the menu, and access to the security is for administrators only. Regular users and supervisors are not allowed into the security section. So I've clicked on the button, and here are the options in the main security menu. At the top of the screen you have the name of the server which you're connected to and the name of the database which you're connected to. There are some options here. This is for the login screen, the group screen, the user screen, the option to reset table rights, the database access screen, the menu access screen, which will be the focus of this training video, the report access screen, the email settings, and there's an option here to view the video for the security. Now, each of these options have videos which explain how they work in greater detail. There's a video for logins, groups, and users, which includes the reset table rights option. There's a video for database access. There's a video for the menu access, a video for report access, and a video for email settings. As I mentioned, the focus of this video is the menu access. So let's click on the button, and here's the menu access screen. Now, I'll begin by giving a brief explanation of how it works. Then we'll look at the layout of the screen, and then we'll go into detail on how it works. The purpose of the menu access screen is to turn on or off to allow or restrict the display of sections of the menu. Now there's a menu visible, the menu bar. This is the ribbon menu. And under each item on the menu, there's a set of under each section of the menu, there's a set of items which open certain screens, and normally by default these are all visible to everyone, all accessible. What the menu access screen would do is allow you to turn on or off for either a user, an individual user, or a group of users, to hide either a complete section, like say records, or items under a section. So you can use it to maybe hide this admin section here entirely, or you could use it to hide the command center, the database layout, and the script writer, just these three alone. Please note, as I mentioned it before, that the security option is accessible only to administrators. So whether someone can see it or not, if they're not an administrator, if that user is a regular user or a supervisor, they still cannot access it, though they can see it. So you can use the features of the menu access screen to control what you want. Some menus have quite a lot of options. There's a number of them here in PayPak 4 under the transaction section. Other programs may have a different layout. Also in the tools section of PayPak, that has quite a number of options in here as well. And you may want to restrict access to some of these features from certain users. If you press F12 on the menu bar, by the way, it will switch to the drop-down menu, and when you set the menu access, those items will no longer appear, the ones which are restricted. By default, as I said, when the program starts, for most people, without changing the menu, if you don't change the menu access, everyone sees all the options on the menu. So let's have a look at the layout of the screen. That's the next thing on the list. Here we have at the top the name of the server, the name of the database which you're connected to. There is an option here to say group or user, and that refers to this list of groups and users, and whichever is the first one in the list when you open the screen. In this case, it's the office group, so group appears here, and then office, so it's the type, the ID, and the name. They appear in these three sections. As you scroll through the entries in the list, if I highlight supervisor 3, for example, then I see their options. So this indicates the group or user whose menu access options are being set, either allowing or restricting that person. So this is basically selecting who you're working on. Now, to the right of that, you've got a count of the options, how many allowed, how many restricted, and how many in total. And that's a list of these options here. These are there's a section to the menu, then there's the item of the menu, and then there's an option to say allow. Now, I would like to point out that the number of rows in here is actually more than 73, because it does not include the count does not include the header sections, which are listed in here twice. Look at transactions, for example. Transactions begins with new batch, edit batch, and import gross pay. In the list, you will see transactions. It says all on it, which represents all of the items underneath it, and then the individual items are listed: new batch, edit batch, import gross pay. So when the count is done, these entries which have all to represent all of the items in that section, those are excluded from this count. I mentioned before the list of groups and users, which, as you scroll through it, it's there. Now let's move this over, and I want to show you the users screen. Let's move it so that we can get best possible view. There we go. Bring it down. Fine. So for the groups and users, first of all, you have the list of the groups. This user screen shows the list of users in the system. There are 12 users in total, and the users is a count. This is a list of logins actually, but the users are the ones who have a user ID in this column. And of those, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Test user, that login for test user, is not a user because it does not have a user ID. So that's why you see the 12 here. Of those 12, one is the administrator, which is this entry here where you see the checkbox for administrator. 3 are supervisors, because they're checked as supervisors here. 1, 2, and 3. And the remaining 8 are regular users. Regular users are people who are neither supervisors or administrators. You can either be a supervisor, an administrator, or a regular user. You cannot be both a supervisor and an administrator, or it's an administrator and a regular user, or a regular user and a supervisor. You're either one of the three. So when you have highlighted in the menu access screen the office group and you set the menu access for that using this grid here, which we'll come to next, you are in effect setting the rights for all the people in the office group, which is user 3, user 4, and user 5. When you set the rights, the menu access rights for the sales group, oh, I also missed one just now. In the office, supervisor 2 is also a member of the office group. So when you set the rights for the office group, you're setting rights, menu access rights for supervisor 2, user 3, user 4, and user 5. When you set the menu access rights for the sales, you're setting the rights for user Jane Doe, John Doe, Michael Smith, and supervisor 1. There are also some users who are not assigned to groups, and they're listed. If you have users who are not assigned to groups, they're listed under groups, and that's supervisor 3, user 1, and user 2. And you can check this column here, the group ID column, and where it's blank, provided that the person is is not an administrator, you will see, because administrators have access to all parts of the software. So this list will contain users who are regular users or supervisors. So you have the first blank one is supervisor 3, who does not belong to a group, and then you've got user 1 here and user 2, which is here because those three do not belong to a group. So that's an explanation of who gets updated based on your selections here. Now, the menu access pane, there's a pane here for the users and there's a pane here for the menu access. The menu access section, as I said, represents the menu which you see here. You've got the transactions, you've got the 3 report options, then you've got your records. So it basically follows the structure of the menu. And you have the name of the section, the item, and each section begins with the words all, and then you have an allow column. Now, if the allow is ticked, that gives the person, the group, or the user access to that section of the menu. If the option is off, then you are restricting access to that section of the menu and the user does not see it in their menu list. So let's look at user 1, for example. Let's start with the user. I'm not going to do a group. First, I'll start with the user. For the user, let's already start back at the top for the group. We're in the group office. We're setting the rights for the office group, which is supervisor 2, user 3, user 4, and user 5. So if I come here to the first option in transactions and I turn off the allow, I get a prompt saying, do you want to apply this setting for all items in this section? If I say yes, everything which is under transactions is turned off automatically, and those users will not see this header or these options on their menu. Now, I could still come in and turn on individual settings. They're still not going to see them as long as this option here is on. So let's say we wanted to let them have access to some of the items here. Let's say we wanted to let them have access to new batch, edit batch, and payslips. What you would do I'm just going to turn this back on and I'll say yes to it. Okay. Now that's just to restore the original settings. There are quite a lot of options in here. Let me see if I can bring this down. Right, so that we can, right, good. So we can see visible are all the transaction options. They begin here and they end here. And then you got the report section. So if I want to give the user access to 3 of these options, new batch, edit batch, and pay slips, the quickest way to do that is probably to turn off everything and tick just the ones that I need. So I say, I turn off the allow, say yes, everything goes off. There's a count here in the totals, and I turn on new batch, edit batch, and pay slips. Okay, so they have access to those 3 sections, everyone in the office group. If I come down to reports, I want them to have access to the reports. That's fine. I don't want them to have access to records. I can turn off all the records. Well, if they're in the office, they probably want access to those. So let's say no to that and just turn that off. Let's do that for the sales folks. So the sales group, that's a more realistic scenario. The folks in sales will not be able to have access to the records. So let's say no to this. Good. Okay. So for the office, we're turning on access to that for that group to certain things in here. Just the new batch, edit batch, and pay slips. Let's go to tools, for example, and we're going to turn off all the options for tools. I say yes to that. So for that group of users, I have turned off those particular settings on the menu. So when they log in, they're not going to see the same options that other people would normally see. So we can test that by signing in as one of the office members. Let's also go to the sales group. And for the sales, we are going to turn off everything except maybe reports. What would a salesperson want to see? Okay, let's see. The people in sales can look at everything except reports. So for the sales group, there's an all button here. So I could either go to, well, the slowest way of doing it is to come to each individual item and tick them off, or to go to each header item and turn off the items in the header. I could just click on none, however, and that turns everything off. All turns everything on. None turns everything off. So if I only want to give them access to reports, the people in that sales group, I then come to the reports section, which is here, and I can tick the all here. This, remember that all list, that first thing list must be turned on in order for them to see the header section. I will now say yes, I want to give them access to everything in here, so they can access standard reports, the chart generator, and the query generator. I don't want them to have access to anything else. Just the reports, that's it. And if I decide I don't want them I want them to go into standard reports but not the chart generator or the query generator, I could do that as well. So that's the option set for them. As soon as this column is ticked, this allow column is ticked, whether you tick it manually or it's ticked through the all button or the none button, these access options are updated, and that takes immediate effect. So what I'm going to do now is, let me just minimize these 2 screens here so we can see the login screen a little better. Don't want the screen to be too cluttered. Maybe bring this fellow in a little bit. There we go. Right, so we're all set now to sign in as someone who is a member of the office group. And that was a smart thing to remove the list of the office users. Here they are. So a person who's in the office group would be, I could sign in as supervisor 2, I could sign in as user 3, user 4, or user 5. I will sign in as user 3. So click here, log in. Out comes the login screen. User 3. Put my password in. Log in. And up comes the menu. Now on the menu, I'll just place that underneath mine. On the menu, you've got reports as the very first thing. We know it's working because you don't see transactions. Remember, we turned off transactions. That's no longer there. However, we are seeing the records. Right, the records is ticked. I don't want them to see records. Go look at the records headers there. It turns out it wasn't ticked, so let's turn that off. Say yes to those. And let's turn off the import. Let's turn off the all. Let's turn off. Oh, this is Office. What am I doing? Let's turn them back on. It was the sales who don't have access to everything. So let's just reverse that. These users have access to these sections. So I'll just reverse that. We're correct after all. Going on the right track. Okay, so the only thing they do not have access to in the office, they do not have access to transactions. Well, they actually have access to create a new batch or edit a batch, but this got turned off. That's what was wrong here. So I need to say no to that. So now they can, this will give you, because the header must be on. That's what's wrong. I got mixed up there somewhere. Let's sign out as user 3 and sign back in again. or user 3. Oops. User 3. Enter the password and we log in. And now you've got your transactions menu. See? You've got the transactions with just these 3 options. New batch, edit batch, and pay slips. You don't have these ones here or the ones after pay slips. They're gone. So it's a much shorter list of options. Under reports, you've got the options there. So everything else they can access as before. If for that user I wanted to turn off everything under tools, I could let's now do it again. Turn off everything under tools for the office group. You come here, you go to tools, turn that off, say yes to that, close, sign back in. Let's log in again. User 3 and log in, and tools is now gone. It goes from records to import. At the top, records, tools, import. At the bottom, records, import. Okay, so that's for a member of the office. Now, for someone who is a member of the group sales, where did okay, here we are. Good. Let's go to the let's go to the window for that. Here it is, right. So the sales group, we've got Jane Doe, who's JD1. I'll keep this here so that could find it more easily again. Right click, login, and we go to JNDO, JD, mixed up already, lost, JD2. Right, so JD2, sign in, login, that's our menu, and as you can see, it's much shorter. The options at the top. The transactions is not there. The reports is there with the 3 options. Settings is there because, and help is there because they are not controlled. You can't restrict the options for settings and help through the security system. They're excluded. Every user has access to these features here. Okay, so that explains how the menu looks. Now let's look at a user. There are some who are not members of groups. There were individual users, which is supervisor 3, user 1, and user 2. For user 1, I could come here and I could turn off. Let's start by turning everything is on because allowed is 73, restricted is 0, and total is 73. So for user 2, let's say in transactions, we don't want this, we don't want that, you don't want them going into here, you don't want them going there, you don't want them coming here, you don't want them going there. Out of this, they can do the reports, they can do the records. For some of the tools, you don't want them having certain rights. Let's just pick some at random. You don't want them importing. You don't want them exporting. Right. And for the admin, you don't want them in database updates. You don't want them in admin locks. You don't want them in the command center. Well, let's give them 1. We don't want them in these other sections. Security doesn't matter because whether you turn that on or off, that's besides the point. If it's shown, they still cannot access the security. This is for user 2, and we'll test that in a moment. So that's the rights for user 2. Now, if we wanted to take these settings here and apply them to someone else, that's what these copy and paste buttons are for. User 2 has access, is allowed into 51 sections and restricted from 22. User 1 has access to everything. So let's just log in first as user 2 to show you what that looks like before we look at the copy and paste feature. User 2, we just want to make sure it's working before we copy it to someone else. And we log in. There's the menu. Reports, records, tools. Well, it is shorter because I can see that the width of this section above here, it stretches from here to there. And this one stretches only across to here. So something is definitely out. Doesn't have the records. Doesn't have the import. Doesn't have the export. If I go to admin, there's a security button. I click on it and it says access denied. Only administrators are allowed into the security section. So you could still show it. They still can't get into it unless they're an administrator. By the same token, if you don't even want them to know that it's there, you hide it. See? Now I'm going to close this. Let's say, oh, this is user 1, by the way. I want to do that for user 2. I want to do that for user 2 for a particular reason. Security, we turn that off. Now, these are the settings now for user 2. And I may want, if I ever want to take a set of options, this list of options here, whether they're turned on or off, these access options, and I want to apply them to someone else, that's what the copy and paste buttons do. I select the person I want to copy from, who's the user or group whose rights I wish to copy. I click on the copy button. Then I highlight the user or group I wish to replicate those rights to. From the time I've clicked the copy button, the paste button becomes enabled. So after highlighting user 1, I just click on paste, and those rights are automatically replicated. You can see here it's changed from allowed, it's only allowed 50. If I turn them all on again, let's repeat that, do the paste. Watch the top, there's 73. I click on paste, they're down to 50 now. So if I sign in now as user 1, not only should I see a smaller list of options, but the security should now be not visible to me under the admin. There you go. It only has the database access. The security option here is turned off. So that basically is the functional part of this section, the menu access and the buttons to allow or restrict access to sections of the menu. The next button we have is the print button. And if I click on that, for the selected person, it prints a report which shows the section. Well, first at the top you have the server and the database for which this applies. You've got the name of the group, whether it's a group or a user. In this case, it's a user, it's user 1. The ID and the name appear here. Then you have a list of the sections, a list of the items under that section. This is of the menu. And then you have indicators of whether that person is allowed or restricted into those sections. And at the bottom, you get, on the last page at the bottom, you get a total list of the menu items and the number to which they are allowed and the number to which they're restricted. You can either print this report, well, you can print it if you want to, or you can save it as a PDF and save it in a folder somewhere on a flash drive somewhere, or to the cloud, or wherever you wish for future reference, so that if you ever need to review what access a user has, or to set up the options for someone else, maybe let's say you have a scenario where you have an employee, they leave the company and then they are replaced at a future point in time. Now when they leave, it's very likely that you should remove their login from the system. And when you remove the login and remove the user ID, this information goes. So when the new replacement person comes along, that original employee's options are no longer in here. But if you have a copy of what these menu options were for the replacement staff member, you can use that saved copy of the printout to reset the menu access options. Next option is settings and reset. These two buttons here. These control this divider here. That's the only option on this screen which has something which can be saved in the settings. So if you wish to bring this further across or further back, however you prefer to see it, your particular view, because you can also have it maximized. You can have this like that or whatever the case may be. But wherever you decide to drag that divider, when you click on the settings button, it remembers that, and when you reopen the screen next time, it will position the divider at that same location. The reset button will clear the settings for the divider. The next button is the video button, and if you are working in the software and you wish to see this same video you're watching now, click on the video button. It will open your browser to the YouTube video, and you can go through the video again in case there's something that you want to remember how it's done or how it works. The video will show you everything there. The videos are also on our website, the video page of our websites. All the videos are listed there. All the training videos are listed there. Final option is to exit. And that brings this video to an end in terms of the features. Now, I would just like to point out that for the groups can save you a tremendous amount of time when you have several users, because let's say you have a business and you have maybe 15 employees, 15 users of the software. It may not be PayPak, it may be an invoicing system, or a billing system, an ordering system, whatever. So these 15 employees, if you set them up as a group, if someone leaves and a new person comes and joins, then all you have to do is add a login and the user ID for the new user and add them to the group. As soon as they're added to the group, automatically the menu access rights are assigned to that user. If you don't have a group, you have to assign these options individually. For that user, you have to go through and assign the rights, the menu access rights for that user. Now, if you had 15 employees in the group and the rights were set, then you don't have to remember if you're putting the person into the group. If you're assigning it individually, you have to remember what you gave them. You can refer to the printout. There are quite a number of items in this list, so it may take some time to go through the list. It could be a long list. So not only do you have to assign the rights, you have to remember which particular access rights you gave them. And that can be compounded if you add new staff. You got 15 staff and the business is expanding. You bring on 10 more and they need access to the software too. For whatever reason, they may be similar, whatever the case may be. Having the group avoids having to set up the various types of rights, because remember, you're not just setting for those 10 new employees the menu access rights. You are also setting up 10 times individually if you don't have the a group. You're also setting up database access rights, menu access rights. You have to set these up 10 times, the database access rights 10 times, set up the menu access rights, set up the report access rights 10 times, and if they're using email, if they're using the company email to email documents, maybe to email invoices or quotations or payslips or whatever, you can have all of that configured under one group. So it saves you tremendous amount of time to do it in that manner. Okay, you can, to manage your making use of the groups, it's an efficient way of managing your users and resources within the database, because rather than having to do this 10 times, do this 10 times, do this 10 times, and do this 10 times, you just add the 10 users, set up their login IDs and their member IDs, the user IDs, the login names, and set up the logins and the user IDs, add them to the group, and you're done. Very, very simple. Okay. So that basically brings this demo to a close. Let's just go back and look at the screen and have a little recap of how it works. You've got the server name, the database name, whether it's a group or a user that you're looking at. And remember, when the screen opens, it's highlighted the first entry. So if you wanted to check these, you would scroll down through this list to see. If you want to run a quick check on who has access to what, just scroll through that list quickly. But when you come here first, this is just that particular person who you have selected, group or user. That's the first in the list. We've got a count of how many items they're allowed to access and how many they're restricted from. You've got a list of the groups and users here, and you've got a list of the sections of the menu and the items in the menu. At the bottom are the buttons to refresh the screen. That refreshes the display because you may have had new groups or users being added. There may be changes made elsewhere. A person may be added to a group, removed from a group, new users added, users removed. You've got the all and none button, so you can turn on access to all the items or turn it off. You can copy and paste to take these settings for one user and apply them to another user or another group. You've got the print to print the report. There's the settings and the reset buttons to control the divider, the position of the divider, and you've got a button for the video. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed the time you spent with me going through this video. It's been a pleasure to present it to you as always, and we encourage you, if your work requires that you are to be knowledgeable about the menu access, then you are probably going to need to also be familiar with the other security videos on database access, report access, and email settings, because there are they're essential parts of the overall security system. So thank you once again for the time you spent with us, and we look forward to the next video. Take care and goodbye till next time.